Welcome to Built by a Boss. I'm your host, EVOLYN Brooks, journalist, award-winning producer, author, founder of In My Solitude LA. On this podcast, you'll hear unique origin stories, growth strategies, and meaningful insights from successful female founders and entrepreneurs who are creating groundbreaking businesses and careers with intention. This episode is brought to you by Audible. If you love listening to podcasts, you will certainly enjoy the audiobook of my guest today, Miss Tina Lifford. Many of you may know her as the character Aunt Vi from one of my favorite shows, Queen Sugar on the OWN network. She's written a wonderful book called The Little Book of Big Lies, a journey into inner fitness. It's definitely a game changer. Here's Miss Tina Lifford. Enjoy. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, EVOLYN. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm so very well as well. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you, truly. I am so excited to talk to you. So first of all, I love this book. This book, truly, it's made for these times.
Yeah.
It's a tool for people to use just to help you manage your emotions, help you protect your mental health.
Yes.
I just love it, and I am thrilled to be able to do this conversation with you because you are my people. And I have to tell you why, because I read something in your book and I was just like, oh my God, I know this woman. So you wrote this one part about how when you were a child, how you were very serious and you were into personal development, right?
Uh-huh.
And I thought, okay, so when I was little, I read like Louise Hay and Florence Scovel's, all this stuff, right? And I used to make affirmation cards, and I would give them to my sister when she would do something mean to me.
That's beautiful. That's a fantastic story.
Oh my God. But then she would rewrite them and give them back to me with something snarky on them.
Now that sounds hysterical as well, I have to tell you.
I know. But when I read that you were that kind of little girl, I was just like, yep, so was I. I have to talk to her. So thank you. Thank you for being here today. And thank you for sharing your story. So many wonderful moments in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I love the idea of this book being a vehicle to help us become fully alive.
Yeah.
Explain what that means, being fully alive.
Yeah. That's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking. So to be fully alive means to have full access to ourselves, which means that there's no part of us that we are rejecting, denying, circumventing out of fear, or pretense. Instead, we are in this acknowledgement of who we are, this awareness of who we are. And that awareness allows us to acknowledge all the aspects of our being and this journey. It allows us to say, this is where I am, this is what happened, this is how I feel, this is what I want. And for so many people, the hurts, dramas, traumas, upsets, disappointments, and fears that I, lump into the word lies, those things have robbed people of their ability to have full access to themselves in those ways.
So what is a big lie? Because sometimes we don't even know that a big lie is blocking us from living a life where we feel fully alive.
Yeah. Again, great question. So, the little book of big lies, it actually speaks to about 13 lies.
Mhm.
But those 13 lies help you to see how any event, and this is how I define a lie, and then I'll talk to you about some specific lies.
Mhm.
I define a lie as any event, person, or experience that left you feeling less than, not good enough, incapable, or afraid of knowing yourself. Anything that separated you from your innate wholeness, your innate worth, is a lie. And those moments must be revisited so that we can take our power back from the lie and begin to expand into our greater, most authentic and whole self. And these are lies that we tell ourselves all the time and can't even see them. The lie of that you're not good enough. It's a big lie, and that lie, it is such a subtle, ingrained thought in so many different areas of our lives. So we have to be able to see that one and, call it out. Big lie. Big lie is that some pain lasts forever.
Mhm.
We all have something that we have tried as best as we have known how to do up until now. We've tried to, fix that thing once and forever. We've tried to, forget it once and forever. We've tried to turn our back on it and walk away. We have tried time and time again to circumvent this pain, whatever it is, this discomfort, whatever it is. And yet, we periodically find ourselves in a set of circumstances where, we feel like we're right back to where we started.
Mhm.
And when we feel that experience of being right back at where we started, there is in that this frustration, and underneath that frustration, there is the fear and the sadness that we'll never be free of it. And that lie in particular is the reason that I wrote the little book of big lies, because we must know, we must know that science, brain science, is
Mhm.
letting us know that our brains are available and willing and capable of change from the day we are born to the day we die. That was not always known to be true, and now science confirms that,
Yes.
which means that we, with better information, can revisit those lies. And with that better information and practice, just like you have to put in the work where your physical health and weight and all of that are concerned, but with that effort you can indeed change anything and everything for the better.
So here is something about your book that I thought was a true foundation to me that I want to talk about, because I'm like, okay, this is kind of the beginning of where you start to figure out those lies. And I'll mention that at the end of every chapter, you actually have exercises. So it's a practice. So it's not just us talking about it today, but like people need to get the book and then actually fully commit themselves to the practices at the end of each chapter. But this
Yes.
is the thing that really resonated. And when you said talking about the brain changing things, like I I know you read that book, The Brain That Changes Things.
Yes.
That
Mhm.
book is amazing, but it just talks about, our brain and plasticity and how we can change things, our thoughts, but it also made this connection to our other brain that's in our gut, our instinct. And in your book, there is a moment when you are in the car with your boyfriend and you decide that you are not ready to have sex with him. And you
Yes.
could not articulate it, but your intuition, your gut, your connection to your heart and your self-love helps
Yes.
you figure that out. So can you go into that moment and how the lie was in the feeling in your body? Like that's the first thing. That's the first moment that you become aware that something's not right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our sensitivity should never be underestimated. Even after years of sort of numbing ourselves in an attempt to distance from feeling, there is a part of us, I call it the thriving self or even the infinite self, it knows who we are,
Mm.
and it is always endeavoring to help us fully realize who we truly are. And a great way that it assists us is through our feelings, through those intuitions, those gut instincts, those moments that sort of, crawl over our flesh as chill bumps, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our job is to pay attention. I cannot overemphasize the importance of paying attention, because if you slow down or if you just make self a priority, then you will begin to hear just little, not full-fledged voiced advice, even though that can happen as well. I've had that happen. But you can hear a, uh-uh,
Mm-hmm.
go this
Yeah.
way. You know,
Uh-uh. No, I
uh-uh,
wouldn't do that.
yeah,
Yep.
go this way. That's not going to be good.
It's a whisper.
It's a whisper, and that whisper may not even happen in voice, but
Mm-mm.
it happens in such a way that your body and your mind are engaged. Something is happening. Up until now, Evelyn, we have not been taught the power of who we are. In fact, science is just beginning to figure out stuff that, mystics have talked about forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we just start with the premise that we are more than the image we see in the mirror, and that we are an extension of an intelligent force, the intelligent force that has created and ordered the universe. If we just start with those two thoughts and leave room to be curious about what that means to you and your life, it will naturally have you begin to be curious, to ask questions, to give yourself more time and attention.
That's interesting because if you look at this moment that we're in, a lot of us have nothing but time and attention to give to ourselves, and people are struggling with that much time for
And
introspection.
yeah, yeah. And it's really interesting that you bring that up, because this time in quarantine has been extremely gratifying and fulfilling time for the work that I do, the Inner Fitness Project.
Mm-hmm.
Lord knows I love acting and want to act until I die. However, the inner fitness work is, it's in tandem.
Mm-hmm.
And when the pandemic hit, we had just maybe a month and a half earlier begun to do inner fitness workouts online.
Mm.
where we are finding a model and a way to make inner fitness as familiar, well understood, accessible, and actionable as physical fitness is in our lives.
Right.
Because we know that well-being is as important to our overall life as wellness is,
Right.
right? And I'll tell you that it is incredibly exciting. It's exciting for what's possible and what's coming for our culture, not just in terms of people of color, but in terms of the American culture and the world. What's coming, I can see because in this pandemic, you've got people, logging on who want to be in community. You've
Mm-hmm.
got people, at a time when work and how much money they're making is not totally known or secure. You've got people coming in and investing in their inner health and well being. We've got that conversation happening in corporations now. So our society is in enough pain
Mm-hmm.
that we are making major shifts and changes in how we live life. And I just need to share a couple of these statistics. 1 in 5 women takes some sort of antidepressant. One in
Wow.
five women.
That's a big number.
That's a big number. 1 in 4
One in.
people. Yeah, and women suffer with depression more than men. 1 in 4 people has experienced some form of parental abuse.
Mm-hmm.
1 in 5 Americans was sexually molested as a child. Not 1 in 5 women.
People.
1 in 5 Americans was molested as a child. And 1 in 8 has grown up with alcoholic relatives and all of the chaos that goes with that. We, without question, are in need of support
Mm-hmm.
for the living, that has the dysfunctional living. And dysfunctional can sometimes sound harsh. So I'm going to say the misguided choices that have come from our ignorance about who we are as emotional beings. And that work is being corrected. Those errors, those mishaps, those mistakes and missteps are being corrected. And inner fitness, I am here to tell you, not just because it's my passion, but because it makes sense. We will be engaging in inner fitness, workouts, concerns, and I wouldn't be surprised if an entire industry around inner fitness is birthed in the very way that physical fitness has been changing our lives for the better since 1934.
I agree with you 100%. I think it's for our very survival as a species.
Absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
because our level of emotional intelligence that we're exhibiting right now tells me that we have not been listening to the whispers. Most of us,
That's
all of these things that are happening that have happened to us, we don't have the tools or the skills to really process our emotions, so we just pass it down from generation to generation. And there was one example in your book that I thought was so beautiful. I just can't stress enough that people read this. It's just some of these little stories are just incredible moments to help really show the work that you've done in your own life to be able to pull it into this book and encapsulate it so well, and then give us exercises to actually change our own lives. so hard to do because a lot of people write books, but they don't they don't tell you how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Look,
mean? But it
writers
was,
and church. That's the
yes,
that's the frustration with both church and writing. You know, a lot of self-help books, they say wonderful things that feel good in the moment, but
yes.
they don't show you how to help have self-agency.
Yes. So there was a gentleman in the book who he was just a bad manager, so to speak, but he had to dig down into his own life and see the connection to his own father, and that
Yeah.
he was treated a certain way and therefore
Yes.
he treated other people that way.
Yes.
And so to me, that's kind of like an exercise for inner fitness that is not connected to, you know, a trauma per se that you could put your finger on that happened to you as a child, but a manifestation of it.
Absolutely. We come to treat ourselves the way we have been treated. If we don't know that the way we have been treated is wrong and damaging to our greater sense of ourselves. If we know that, you know, and most of us, when we encounter young abuse, we don't have, you know, the facility, the understanding of life to be able to say, mom, dad, sister, relatives, you know, teacher, friends, that behavior and what you were trying to do and say to me is unacceptable. We don't have that sort of mature thinking and voice. And so those things that happen become internalized. And in the very odd way that we as human beings work, once we hear something, even if we think, well, that just isn't nice or kind or whatever, but once we ingest it, we literally begin to interact with ourselves from that lie. We literally begin to tell ourselves that we're not worth anything,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that we're not good enough, that we're stupid, that we can't get this done, that this will never happen. And so our job is to become aware, you know, aware of who we are. And that, again, it's not the person that you're looking at in the mirror, but we're more and
Mm-hmm.
we're capable of so much more. That whole I'm upset because every single time a person says, I'm upset because, it is a inner fitness moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we begin to realize that what happens outside of us is not what causes us our upset. What causes upset is that something in the past happened that wasn't fully processed,
Mm-hmm.
and that upset remains inside of us waiting to be processed. And then, you know, something new happens and it triggers that unresolved, unprocessed hurt. And so we find ourselves, you know, triggered and angry and enraged. But the truth is that upset was already sitting inside, waiting to be processed.
Mm. That is so good because you know it's that's what you hear a lot when someone is in a situation where they may have been battered or you know you're acting out. You made me do it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, no, it was in you already,
That's right.
and you just didn't deal with it.
That's right. That's right.
You
That's
know
right.
what I also I thought was really awesome that was underneath that in terms of the reaction to things when they happen and how when they're not cleared up and you don't have an understanding of inner fitness, how instead of shining the light on the situation and the person, you 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 dim your own light through self-judgment and self-rejection. You talked
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a part of kind of what's coming up for people right now. It's like that's the pain that we're in, where how long can you beat yourself up? It's like enough.
Yes.
How do I work through this?
Yeah. Yeah. In the book, I share the concept of us having this range of self, you know. Now, first off, for a lot of people, it is news that they even have a self because we
Right.
haven't been taught to think of ourselves in terms of our interior aliveness,
Right.
our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs. So that's news for some people. Oh my God, there's a self, and this self forms itself and moves through the world based upon our my thoughts, my feelings, my beliefs, and
And
my
it's often
actions.
programmed by others.
Exactly, exactly, and it's often programmed by other people specifically and other experiences.
Hmm.
And I think that one of the most important things for people to know and at least contemplate, I have identified for ease, so that we can more easily see self in operation,
Hmm.
the surviving self, the thriving self, and the infinite self. And what we need to know about the surviving self. The surviving self is that part of us that is always in worry, doubt, and fear, always ready for a fight, always looking for what's wrong. No matter how good life can be going, you'll wake up feeling great. And before you know it, what you're looking for is that problem that you had yesterday. Or
Hmm.
what you're looking for or engaged in and focused on is some argument that took place, not just last week, but even 10 years ago.
Yes, you're still
Right.
ruminating. Yeah.
Right. And it's really important for people to understand why that happens. That happens because we are an evolving species. And as an evolving species, we are working with a nervous system that has been in a level of development for 500 million years.
Hmm.
Now, if you just think about it, if we start with a single cell amoeba, and now we're this multi-trillion cell being, you can just imagine how on alert that nervous system had to be and was, because everything was a threat. Animals were a threat until human beings developed the ability to use their minds to be able to conquer or win over nature. Man was sort of low on the totem pole in terms of survival.
Right. Right.
And so the nervous systems we are operating with, have been going, huh? And on alert for millions of years.
Fight or flight. Yeah.
That's right. You know, flight, or freeze. And so that behavior is natural, and we shouldn't beat ourselves up for it. It is the most practiced part of our reactions. But the great news is that as man has evolved, so too has the brain. And we now have the frontal lobe, and it has the ability to actually, it's called the executive thinking center, and it has the ability to be aware, to be self aware,
Hmm.
and to make rational decisions. That's where we can access our thriving self. And so our job, and we can do this, we can get this done, is to begin to give more priority, to the thriving self and the infant self. Learn more about that part of us that is so freaking powerful that it can rewrite the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism that has been in operation for millions of years. But you have to have the right information to do that. And you have to believe what science is saying at this point, that it can get done.
And what you're saying is really interesting because there is a leap that has to happen. And I think that is in the practice, which is the leap from self awareness to self love and self esteem. Because I can be aware, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. But then making the leap to being in the moment, aware of it, and then making a different choice, that's the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. It's in the inner fitness work that we do, I walk through 5 emotions that really speak to the journey that you're talking about. And the first one is going, hmm, hmm. That is us becoming aware, catching sight, you
Mm-hmm.
know, seeing what you haven't seen before. Hmm. And then you go to wow, which is, wow, I do this. This is what happens. Ooh, this is how I feel. Wow.
Like, oh,
I do this
okay.
all the time. When?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? So that wow really does open you up to seeing and having more ability to see. And the more you can see, the more you can change.
Mm-hmm.
And then you move to awe. And that awe is, oh, I just have to accept myself. I have to accept that that's where I was. I have to accept that this is the reality, that I'm in. I have to accept that this is my journey. I have to accept just awe. And that awe is just full of love, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And once you go, it connects you to your value, your preciousness. And now you can mm-mm, interrupt it. Mm-mm, nope. No, mm-mm, no, I see you. I see that that's how I have done it up until now. Mm-mm, I can make a new chance, a new choice. Mm-mm, mm-mm. So, and then gratitude, which is just, thank you.
Right.
So it's wow, oh, and thank you. And we can be moving through our awareness, our acknowledgement, our acceptance, and our pattern interruption, and standing in gratitude. Those are the 5 steps that we have to take for the rest of our lives. And, if I were talking about physical fitness, that's like saying, you have to do cardio work, you have to do, muscle strengthening work, you have to do diet and, be mindful of your diet in order to be strong and healthy for the rest of your life. And our need to go, wow, aw, and thank you is for the rest of our lives, because our lives are unfolding, and awareness and acknowledgement and acceptance and pattern interruption and gratitude are the skills that we need to meet life at every, you know, um, just ongoing to become who we truly are.
I think what you just said there, I think that's also what we're going through as a culture, specifically African Americans. We're in that phase, and then we're also in that phase for the past and the culmination of things. And then we're also in this place of how do we practice self-care in the midst of watching ourselves be re-traumatized on a daily basis? Like, what principle can we gather unto ourselves right now as a guiding force through these type of days we're in?
Yeah. You know, I always recommend that we begin with a higher truth about who we are,
Mm-hmm.
right? When we can tap into a higher truth about who we are, we can more effectively address the victimization that needs to be addressed without feeling like victims, without becoming victims. And one of the ways in which we at the Inner Fitness Project encourage people to think of themselves, it's an acronym called CREW UP, CREWW UP. And that stands for recognizing that you are innately, that means God, made you innately creative, innately resilient, innately empowered to choose and re-choose how you think and respond, innately whole. That means 400 years of slavery, 5,000 years of slavery, laws, unjust laws, none of that, murder in the street, none of that can deny the fact that you are innately whole, innately worthy. And when we begin to give ourselves the kind of time and attention, prioritizing our inner fitness, it forces us to, revisit daily, sometimes, hour to hour, that truth that I am innately innately creative, resilient, empowered to choose, whole, and worthy. And when I allow myself to open to that, so that, that intelligent force that is greater than us all can help put that into form, have that become part of my thinking, have that become part of my response, then I unleash my possibilities. So that's what CREW UP means. We are creative enough to design and redesign our lives. And if we are designing and redesigning our lives, we are designing and redesigning history.
Mm-hmm.
We are resilient enough to weather any storm. We have proven this. I'm looking forward to the research that speaks to, how incredibly resilient Black folks are, and
Yeah,
for
there must be a test we could take.
you know what? And I'm telling you, I'm
Yes.
telling you that is one of our superpowers, and we need to know that so that we don't, as we in this awakening. One of my concerns is that in this very necessary and important awakening that is happening, and all of this conversation about abuse and systemic abuse and historical abuse and institutional abuse, we must talk about that victimization for sure. But Black folks have to hold themselves apart from the idea that they are broken or victims. We must make the system accountable, but we can't take on the belief that we are broken, because
Mm-hmm.
that is where the institutions of greed win.
Mm-hmm.
When you break people, they can't access their innate creativity, resilience, their ability to choose, their power to choose. They can't hold on to their sense of wholeness. They can't hold on to their sense of worth. And it is from that core, from that center, that you actually experience the power of hope, possibility, enthusiasm, curiosity, openness, drive, purpose, all of that comes from, all of that power comes from a sense of one's wholeness. That's the thriving self. We cannot give that part of ourselves over to this pain and this history. And so we have to really, this is as it is, right? Mm-hmm. This is the history that we are living. These are the conditions that we are in. We must use them to grow, not to acquiesce, but to truly step into the power that we are.
Absolutely.
And that is what scares the status quo and system to death. Because if you think about it, Evelyn, Black folks should be extinct by now.
We shouldn't even be here. Yes.
Which speaks to the power that we have, the resilience that we have. I'm not saying we are favored people, because I don't believe in that. I don't believe that there's a higher being or species that is, showing favoritism, but there are ways of being inside of oneself that are powerful. Well, and resilience makes you powerful, and we are freaking resilient.
Well, it's interesting because just through this whole experience and watching everything that's happening, and and we're all participating in our own way. And I have really been thinking about what you just said in terms of, what is it about, people specifically that have the experience of slavery and coming here under those circumstances. And then I've just been looking at how we react to certain things. It's like we experience the trauma, and then I always hear people say, I love us. And what they mean is our ability to take a situation and turn it around, make it funny, the spiritual through line, the infinite self, that's always there.
That's right.
And then we have a way of finding a safe space where we can always be our full selves.
Yes.
Which I think is really valuable, because then, it's valuable, and then it's not at the same time, because you never had the experience of being your whole self in the world. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what we're really trying to break down, Mm-hmm. But this whole idea that we are strong and we are pushing through, and we have for centuries, but at some point you have to be able to embody who you are completely, or that truly, to me, is the end of it all. Like, we're just tired of that.
We are tired of it. And, at least through the lens of inner fitness, if you were to take racism off the table, right? Mm-hmm. And the hurt that the trauma that has gone with racism, if you take it off the table, you are still left with people who are incredibly disconnected from the true self through all kinds of pain, mm-hmm. right? Through all kinds of, rejection, abuse, whatever. Again, a lot of it has to do with just our ignorance up until now about how to better care for the emotional beings that we are. But it is each one of we already sort of culturally, as Black folks, we do have this cultural resilience. Mm-hmm. And the fact that it exists, we should lean into it. Mm-hmm. But now our responsibility is to have individual resilience, to use that cultural resilience and have it lead us to a deeper connection with our individual selves.
Mm-hmm. That's it. That's it right there. Our own lives.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We must, you know, have a greater personal awareness. We must have skills and a practice to be able to say, this happened to me, and this is how I feel. Because if you can say that, then you can process those emotions so that they don't get lodged inside of your being and you lose sight of yourself. And then, life is hard. So, it's really, I have to tell you, I understand that for some people, it is easier to use drugs than to try and wade through the kind of unaddressed, hurt that they have buried inside.
It
Because
is
it just,
not for the weak of heart, however that
yes,
however
or
that
the faint of
that
heart.
quote
Yeah,
goes. Yes.
yeah,
Oh no. I
yeah,
understand why people do not choose it. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
yeah. But what has me excited, is that it's so much easier than you think, because there is nothing more exciting than to sit in our Wellness Wednesday, or to take a workout, or to go to a therapy session, and all of a sudden have that aha moment that gives understanding and voice to previous pain.
You're lighter. You are
Oh my
physically
God.
lighter.
Oh
Mm-hmm.
my God.
Yeah.
It is the best thing since, bread.
Mm-hmm. And you
And
know what? I'll
mhm,
add this point, and you can expand on it, because this is in your book, and this was like the perfect moment, because you said when you come to a realization and you have that moment, you're lighter. You said something in the book. I was like, oh my God, this is so good. It was the idea that even when you do go through a situation and you feel in that moment that you got it, you resolved it, it may come back again, and there is a reason for it. Can you talk? That's my last point.
yeah,
That
yeah.
I thought
And
was a breakthrough moment.
that actually is one of my favorite parts of the book, because I struggled for such a long time, trying to understand why, with all the work that I was doing, that, when that thing revisited, it just felt like I, hadn't done any work, until I understood that the only way to heal the whatever it is, the trauma, the hurt, trauma, upset, disappointment, whatever you're working with, the only way to heal it is for it to show itself again.
Mm.
And when it shows itself again, you have the opportunity of meeting it with more of your whole self. So each time that it revisits, when you have prioritized your inner fitness, when you have begun to build in practices that really do allow you to make those empowered choices in the moment, where you really do see yourself as creative, resilient, empowered to choose, whole, and worthy, and you begin to operate from a desire and then actions of self-love, when that thing happens again, you get to respond in a way that you didn't respond the first time.
Mm.
You get to
That's
respond in a
beautiful.
way that is more self-loving, because it's the lack of self-love that created the trauma. It's not the experience that created the trauma. It's our internalized meaning that we have laid on top of really difficult realities. But when we take those difficult realities and then on top of that, we reject ourselves and make ourselves in some way wrong, that's where the hurt, burrows down deeply into our being. And so when a past hurt or event surfaces, our job is to address it this time with more self-love. And when you do that, you will expand and it will come around again and you will address it with even more self-love. But you have to learn what that means and what that looks like in action until you are with that thing and that thing does not define you and that thing does not disrupt your sense of yourself in any way. That's called healing, and that's called self-love.
And that is in the book, The Little Big of Big Lies, A Journey into Inner Fitness. I just have two short questions for you, Miss Tina Lifford, and then I will let you go.
Okay.
The first thing I always ask all of my illustrious guests, if you have 24 hours in one day, what are 2 to 3 things that you do to ensure your success or support your success in life every day?
Yeah. So there are two principles that I work from: grace and ease and bending time. Time is a construct. The universe doesn't know anything about, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. That's something that we human beings have created to help us organize. I get it. So I live a very intentional life. I always know what I want. I never necessarily know how to get it.
I get
right? But knowing what I want is important. And so if I've only got 24 hours and in these busy lives that we are living, quite often my intention is, okay, God, and this is how I walk around my house talking, right? Okay, God, so how do we bend time and get done what needs to get done with grace and ease? That is always my inner prayer and intention. I refuse to give my life away to stress. I refuse to make important things that are not ultimately important. And I am an accountable person. So then I need wizardry. I need that kind of power and intelligence that has organized this entire thing called the universe. I need that as a resource. I'm clear about that. And so I move with that in mind. I will say very quickly that we have 14 practices of inner health and well-being. That is actually going to be my next book. But practice number 1 is I turn my life over to a force greater than me that loves me, cares for me, and responds to my heart. And I ask for its assistance in all that I do. So that's how I get up. Okay.
Turn it over.
Okay. 24 hours and 48, hours worth of stuff. So how does this happen with grace and ease? And I let something greater than me do the sorting and create the pathways.
That's beautiful. Last question. This podcast is called Built by a Boss. What is your definition of a boss?
My definition of a boss is a person who cares enough about self, team, and success to do the personal work that allows me to be the most transformational leader that I can be. So that the first rung of business for me is to make sure that my business is handled, my inner business is handled, so that I can show up and in the way in which I'm being, be a space and create a space where other people can bring their innate creativity, resilience, empowered to choose their, whole and worthiness to the space. And that we can do this thing called work together, which is not always easy, but we can do it consciously, and we can do it purposefully, and we can do it daring to at least ask for greater levels of grace and ease.
And there it is. Miss Tina Lifford, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you, EVOLYN.
Thank you. Wow. Wasn't that amazing? I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I sure did. Miss Tina Lifford did not come to play. If you'd like to hear more about her amazing journey and learn all of her cutting-edge personal development practices, you can sign up right now for a complimentary trial membership through our special Built by a Boss link at www.audibletrial.com/builtbyaboss. That's www.audibletrial.com/builtbyaboss. You can also find this information in the show notes. And if you're new to Built by a Boss, liked this episode and found it valuable, please take a moment to leave a 5-star review and a comment. It really helps other people find us who might like the podcast. You can also join our Built by a Boss Patreon community for as low as $1 a month and help us create more content like our Increase Your Side Income course on Teachable that's designed to help beginning entrepreneurs on their journey. You can follow us at Built by a Boss on Instagram and Facebook, and also visit me at inmysolitudela.com for well-being content that supports your mind, body, and spirit. As always, thanks for listening, and I am so grateful for you. Until next time, be kind, be brave, be better, be a boss.